Hey, we are talking about Moon Knight episode 1, The Goldfish. We are going to do our spoiler free review and then get into a spoiler breakdown of the episode starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Nathan.
I am Colin.
I'm David.
Hi, so the spoiler free synopsis of this episode is Stephen Grant learns that he may be a superhero, but may also share body with a ruthless mercenary. This is written by Jeremy Slater and directed by Mohamed Diab. Colin, what did you think of this episode?
This was a very interesting episode. I liked it overall. I think that it was pretty solid, just like a standard Marvel affair. But I was shocked in terms of how wacky it was in a good way. I think that it's comparatively speaking to WandaVision, it's not as crazy or as crazy as Loki or WandaVision, but it's just the wackiness of it all is just very fast, very interesting to me. And I think that even there were some moments where I was laughing out loud, and I didn't expect that to happen because, in all the previews and stuff, Marvel kind of pitched as though it's very supernatural, it's very serious, there's some serious themes to it, but it's really not. It actually was pretty humorous throughout, and how they we'll get to that in the spoiler review, how they treated the main character who's played by Oscar Isaac, how they went about going through that, and it was just really good in that sense and kept you invested in the show. And I definitely look forward to what else happens in the next 5 episodes that they're going to have. But yeah, overall a very solid opening episode. And I think one of my friends said it was probably the best opening episode that they have of all the Marvel shows so far. I don't want to go that far into it, but I would say it's pretty solid overall.
Yeah, David, what do you think?
I always been reading the Moon Knight series for like a long time, and then I always think of it as the DC's version of Batman. But I've been ever since they've announced it, I was like so hyped for it. And then when I found out that Oscar Isaac is doing it, I'm thinking, wait, what? And then when I saw the previews, I getting more hype on it. But then watching the whole episode, I was like literally on the edge of my seat here because we get to know the character. Because this episode is basically learning about the character himself and everything, and then later on how he became to be, as we all know at the end. But overall, I like that we get to know more of the character, like a crash course backstory of the character before we jump onto the action here, instead of just copy and paste and say, let's get onto it. And then, while Marvel does a good job, the writers made do a good job of introducing this character that's completely separate from the whole MCU that we know today as of now. So I really love this so far, and I like the introduction, how they introduce the character and so forth, and the whole premise of the story.
Yeah, I liked the episode too. It was a good opening. It was a good first episode. I think it might be one of the better ones. I don't know if it's the best. I'd have to think back. They've had. It's funny because around this time last year, I think WandaVision was just wrapping up, or maybe wrapped up like a couple weeks previous. Right. It's funny that we've had so many Marvel shows just in the last year, so I really would have to think back to every beginning. But this one, I think, was one of the most cinematic because they didn't shoot a lot of green screen or set locations. They actually were on location. They were actually in London. I think for part of this, they were actually somewhere in Germany. So there weren't a lot of there were a lot of sets there were a lot of locations that you would actually see in an actual movie. So that I appreciated. Also appreciated the direction by Mohamed Diab, because there's I think from the trailers you can see that the main character from this first episode, Steven, is having some issues, some mental issues, and how they depict that, how the director has decided to depict that, was really really interesting. I mean, it's some of the cinematic language that we've seen before with, say, Gollum and other characters like that. But I appreciate, because Gollum wasn't like the main character in those movies. It's interesting when you have a main character and he has multiple personalities and how he deals with them. So the decisions that they made to have you similarly situated with Steven and also empathize with Steven and be just as disoriented as Steven is in this episode. I really appreciated those decisions. Not only that, but there were also aspects of this episode where it was like legit creepy and scary, and you were again put into the mindset of Steven and why he would be so afraid and confused and just disheveled because he doesn't understand what's going on with his life, and it's affecting every aspect of his life. He can't maintain relationships. He can't have a normal life. And you really feel for him. But you also, it's still a Marvel property. So you get some action in here, and you get some superhero stuff. But in addition to that, you also get some humor, because whereas his life is pretty crappy, they lean into the sad parts of that and also the funny parts of that as well. So it's overall, I'm just like, as I'm talking myself through this episode, it actually probably is, if not the best, one of the best starts to a Marvel series. The other thing I would say is that there are very few references to the MCU, which is fine. We know it's a Marvel movie, a Marvel show. We don't have to have a reference every minute. It's if they don't mention Marvel's larger universe for the entire show, that's fine. I mean, we know that Moon Knight will probably show up later on somewhere else, so it doesn't really matter. So yeah, that's also and not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just an interesting thing, seeing as how all the other shows seem to drop something in. All the other shows and also movies drop a character and a reference in. There were no references. And I think that was done not necessarily intentionally. The story is pretty complex. There's multiple personalities. There are Egyptian gods. There's just a lot of things that you have to explain to the audience, and then layering in the Marvel stuff on top of that probably would have made it overly complex. Right. So it was probably just a decision of like efficiency. To cut some of that stuff out, and it's not necessary because, like I said, there's a lot to explain to the audience. So overall, I think it was a very successful first episode of the season. So yeah.
But just two quick things before we jump into spoilers is that we know that most likely they're going to tie it into the MCU as we get closer toward the end of the series. We know that that's going to happen. And also the other thing is that speaking to the talents of Mohamed Diab, he's actually, I think,
he's Egyptian,
rumored to be. Yeah, he's going to be doing the Nova stuff that we just announced. I think it was kind of, I don't know if it was like an official announcement, but he's been going to be doing some type of future project as well. So they obviously like him a lot.
Like a movie or a show, a Nova show?
I don't know if it was like I'm pretty sure it was more of a show, but I'm not 100% sure. I mean, it's been stuff online that's been saying that he is going to be he's going to be more of the creative stuff. So it seems as though they like him a lot in what he did here in Moon Knight. So I'm very happy that he's probably going to be having other opportunities within the MCU.
Yeah, I think as you said, they're definitely going to lean into the MCU stuff probably at the end of the season, or even if they don't, Moon Knight teams up with people like Blade and people like the Dark Knight, or who was Kit Harington?
Black Knight.
Black Knight. Mm-hmm. So we know that those team ups happen in the comics, so they're probably going to try to make them happen down the line. So if they even you don't see those things in the show, they will happen at some point. So yeah, but yeah, I think that casting Oscar Isaac in this role was a really good choice. He's an exceptional actor, and he's playing lots of different notes because he's playing the different characters completely differently. Apparently, it was a decision that he made to actually give Stephen a British accent, and there are people making fun of it because it's not a good British accent, but if you know what's going on, it's not a good British accent on purpose, right? Because he wouldn't have a good British accent because Marc isn't British. So, but so it was an interesting acting choice because it wasn't a direction from the director or the producer. It was a suggestion by Oscar, which is what you get when you hire an actor of that caliber. He goes there and he elevates the script. So yeah, it's really,
and he's in high demand. I mean, at that time when they tried to cast him, I mean, he was scheduled to do rumored to be in several projects, and I think that Marvel was really excited when he chose them to be Moon Knight. So I think that it speaks to the volumes of how popular he is and how amazing he is as an actor.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he has coming up, but I mean, he was Poe Dameron in Star Wars. He was just in the Dune movie playing an excellent part. So yeah, and now he's here in Moon Knight as the titular hero.
There's a flashback. He played Apocalypse in the X-Men First Class sequel.
He did.
Yes, he did.
He also was the voice in Spider-Man 2099 in the Into the Spider-Verse movie.
Oh yeah. He was that. Yeah, and I think he's going to show up again. Isn't he going to show up again in the new one, or is it
I believe so.
Yeah. Because
there's rumor that more of in the next Into the Spider-Verse movie, there's going to be more Spider-Man coming in.
Yeah, and I think that character Miguel is, I think, what his name is. I forget what his last name
Miguel.
is.
Yep.
Miguel is going to have a much larger part in the sequels of the Spider-Verse movies. So yeah. So anyway, we like the show. We think you should go and see it if you haven't seen it. We are going to jump into some spoiler talk, but before that, if you like the conversation, please join the conversation by commenting down below. Also, like, follow, or subscribe if you're on YouTube. It helps out the channel. We really appreciate it. All right, so spoilers ahead. All right, guys, what do you want to get into? You want to go chronological order? Do you want to jump around? What do you want to talk about?
I think we could just
let's go
chronologically.
Okay,
David.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking chronologically. We just introduced Stephen Grant right there, so let's go from there.
Well, the first thing that we actually see is Harrow. So Ethan Hawke's character, who is Arthur Harrow, he's the first person we see even before the Marvel credits, right? We see him doing this ritual, this purification ritual. He drinks some water. In lots of cultures, water is meant to be purifying, not just Christian faith. So he drinks some water. He breaks the glass that he was drinking the water out of, and then he puts them in his shoe and then walks on them. So there's a couple things going on there. I think, like I said, the water I think is meant to be purification, and the pain. There are also faiths that practice self-flagellation or in inducing pain to show devotion. So I think that's what was going on there as well. It was just a very, very interesting way to start the show. Like, that's the cold open before they show anything else, to show you like how hardcore this guy is. It seems like like the impression that you get is that this is his ritual every morning. He walks on glass throughout the day, and bloodies his feet every day, to show his devotion to whatever. We don't, at this point, we don't know what his devotion is to, but this is how he shows his devotion every day. So that was interesting. But
that would be strange because if he was walking with glass in his shoes every day, then wouldn't it not heal? And then the foot, the foot would be a total mess, if he didn't.
I don't know. Maybe his ritual in the evening is to like bandage his foot up and put some salve on it, and then just start it all over again. I don't know, but I can imagine he's walking with a cane, which you would. Mm-hmm. He's probably caused some permanent damage to the bottom of his foot, so that's why he's walking with a cane. Like he's cut up those muscles so much because he's done this so many times. Even if he's not doing it every day, if he's doing it even once a week, he's cut up those muscles so much that he has to walk with a cane. You imagine? So it's
interesting choice in terms of cold opens. You're right, Nathan. Very interesting choice.
Yeah.
Just I was kind of like, what's going on here? That's kind of weird and creepy, but okay.
So then we get introduced to Marc after the credits, and we find out that he's so he wakes up in his apartment, right? And we see him chained to his bed by his ankle, and there's a combination lock. He has some sand around his bed to make sure that he doesn't no one has walked through the sand. He has some tape on the door to make sure the door isn't open. So even if you hadn't seen the trailers, the impression here is that he's a sleepwalker and he's trying to keep himself from waking up and and walking around. And then we see that he commutes to work, and no one seems to pay him any mind or respect. There's a guy selling brooms in his front, the front entrance, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm okay with it. It's fine." He gets to the museum, he doesn't get any respect from anyone, and then just randomly, like one of the women comes up to him and says, "Are we on for our date?" And he doesn't even know what she's talking about. Mm-hmm.
Let's take a nice.
Yeah. But before that, there's a girl who's like putting trash in one of the exhibits, and he goes into kind of like a spiel about the Egyptian gods and how, sorry, not the Egyptian gods, the pharaohs, and how they were embalmed and how they took out all the organs except for the heart, because the Egyptians believed that the heart was necessary to weigh someone's soul, which is going to come up later on, because we're going to get some weighing of souls later on in the episode. And then he gets kind of harangued by his boss. I think we'll get what her name is. I have it here in the notes here.
Donna.
Yeah, she's not fun. I don't know if they're gonna have like another shoe to drop with her, or she's just not like just an unpleasant person. Like, because we also get a sense here that he shows up sometimes to this job as a different person. So maybe he's a dick as the other person, and like Donna's demeanor towards him is justified, but I don't know. So I think after this, I forget what happens after that. I think at night he tries to combat his night terrors or his sleepwalking by keeping himself awake by solving puzzles or reading books on ancient Egypt. I think earlier before I forgot to mention, when he was talking to Donna, he mentioned that the Ennead, which is I guess basically the pantheon of Egyptian gods, was missing one of the gods. He doesn't mention which god is missing, but that's something that he notices because he's very knowledgeable about Egyptian mythology. He wants to be a tour guide, but she doesn't want him to work as a tour guide. And I think that'll probably come up again later on as well. So he tries to keep awake, but he doesn't. He eventually goes to sleep, and then he ends up waking up in another country. It's not really clear. It looks like Holland or some parts, so like a green part of Germany or something like that. Mm. He wakes up with his jaw dislocated, which was
that's kind of wow. That was wacky. That's one of the wacky parts that I was talking about.
It was a little wacky, but it also makes sense though, right? Like if his alternate personality, Marc, was hit that hard, That's probably what
Mhm.
woke up. That's probably what woke up Steven. So
Mm.
Steven doesn't know what's happening, and he just waves to these guys in a castle, and they start shooting at him. So he starts running, and then we see Arthur again, and and then this is when we find out he's a cult leader or something of some sort. And he's doing this ritual when he's weighing people's souls. There's a guy who he weighs, and that guy is deemed good. So by Amet, which is one of the Egyptian gods, and then he weighs a woman, an old woman, and she's deemed bad, and it seems like her life force is sucked out of her, and she becomes like a mummified version of herself. And this is when the mercenaries catch up with Steven after Arthur says something or another
Right.
that gets everyone to kneel. So this is also, like you said, the wackiness in this is also in this part, right? So this part was interesting for me for a lot of reasons. But mostly because of the wackiness. Like, Steven doesn't know what's going on. Steven also doesn't have 100% control of his body. He's like, he has this scarab, and Harrow wants the scarab, so he tries to give it to him, but his body won't let him. His body won't let him give it to him. And then his body runs away, not completely out of his control. Then he gets cornered, and it looks like he's going to get beaten up or shot. And then he blinks out again. So, like, this is the part. This is also the part. This is also the part where I was mentioning where it was very cool the way that they shot it to give you a sense of Marc's skill, but also mostly how disorienting it would be for Steven, right? Like, he keeps blinking in and out, and we're blinking in and out as the audience as well. So we're not really seeing all the action. We're just seeing the aftermath of Marc's work, right? Just seeing,
right. Him, I think this is before the cupcake truck, right?
Yeah, this is before the cupcake truck. Like, in the street.
We'll get to the cupcake truck later, but it was really, it is really fascinating. Then what also happened was that Khonshu was like speaking to him at this time, and he's what the heck?
He said,
Khonshu's funny.
Yeah, he said the idiot is awake. Oh no, the idiot is awake.
Like, hey, you worm, you're not supposed to be here.
Yeah, he is not a fan of. Khonshu is not a fan of Steven. We should say that Khonshu is the Egyptian god who bestowed power on Marc Spector after resurrecting him after he died. That's what happened in the comics. Who knows what they're going to do in the show? But that's how Marc Spector got powers. That's how his personality was fractured in the first place, because I think his personalities are supposed to be like phases of the moon, and Khonshu is a moon god. But also how he gets powers, because I also think, like, when he first debuted, Moon Knight didn't really have powers. He was just resurrected by Khonshu to be like his avatar, his champion, and he was more like Batman, because the Steven character was more like a Bruce Wayne character, like a rich guy, and he had a sidekick called Duchamp, which we get a Easter egg for Duchamp later on, who he calls him Frenchie. He builds all of his planes and things like that in the shape of like a crescent moon. But I think later on in the comics, they actually gave him supernatural powers where he actually has super strength and things like that. So I think they're going with the supernatural power version of Moon Knight, where he has enhanced strength, because we see him beating up a very formidable opponent at the very end of the episode. Okay. Explanatory karma over. So so after the beat down in the middle of the street, the Marc runs away, gets into a cupcake truck, like you said. And there's a very slow chase after him. where he doesn't know what's going on. He has a gun, but he doesn't. He doesn't have a gun. They catch up with him. Someone gets into the back of the truck and tries to shoot him, and then he blanks out again, and he wakes up. The guy is dead.
With cupcake on his face.
Yeah, cupcake on his face. Wakes up. The guy is dead. And I think there's also another blackout where Marc takes over, and then Steven wakes up, and then he's driving backwards.
Yes. Yes. As I said, it's like from the beginning of the non-spoiler part. It's so wacky. It was like I just found all the action scene was just like the wackiest things ever. And he's like blanking in and out, and you're like, and you are the audience are blanking out with him, and then you're seeing all these like random things like what just happened, and then like you're backing up.
But they're also playing Wham! Wake Me Up Before You Go. Yes. During the entire cupcake chase scene as well, which also adds to the wackiness as well. It's in the background,
exactly.
It's like wake me up.
Yeah,
it's like
yeah, definitely.
I'm watching almost like Jim Carrey in the movie Me, Myself, and Irene, where there's like he's like saying one personality and then switching another personality, and I'm like, but this one here, Oscar Isaac is like more to extreme. It's like, whoa, what the heck is going on here?
Right.
Even though he saw like a cupcake coming off the car when he's being chased, and then all of a sudden we have all these a landfill of trees coming down off the cliff or something like that.
So once Steven is in control again, Khonshu yells to him that there's a truck, and he swerves around it. It's a big logging truck. So that takes out some of his pursuers. But he when he woke up and he had the gun, he threw the gun away, which is conscious like the idiot threw the gun away.
Did he also say that he couldn't drive too? That was kind of strange too. It was like I think he said that he didn't know how to drive. Like Steven said that at the beginning before all of that was happening. When he blanked back in and then he said he couldn't drive, and I was like, whoa, that's interesting.
I'm not sure why he got into the cupcake truck though, then, because he's the one who got into the cupcake truck, not Marc. So it's not like he woke up.
True.
It's not like he woke up in the cupcake truck. We saw him get into the cupcake truck. So I don't know. He doesn't. I think there's a lot of self-delusion going on with Steven, but he's more capable than he thinks he is, because like as we were saying at the beginning, his British accent isn't real. He's all these things that he's created in this personality. So I don't think that he could have handled himself with mercenaries, but things like being a vegan, maybe not being able to drive, those things are things that are part of his personality, but not really who he is. So yeah, it was interesting. I think we end with him just waking up the next day, right? What we think is the next day.
But it's not.
But it's not. So it looks like a dream, right? It looks like he woke up as in a dream. So
he was the goal. He saw the goldfish.
He starts to notice some oddities, right? Oddities rather. He notices that the goldfish has a fin. And we established earlier in the episode that this goldfish only has one fin like Nemo, or like a small fin like Nemo. And they actually mention Nemo in the episode. So this is what the episode title. This is where the episode title comes from, the Goldfish Problem. So he goes to a pet shop, pet store, and asks for a fish with like a missing limb, which is weird, which is a weird request, but whatever. But she also says something that is similar to what the woman who said that they have a date said. Very similarly, she said, "Well, I told you this yesterday when you were in here."
Mm-hmm.
Again, someone is telling him that he had a conversation with them, and he doesn't remember that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I would
Right.
also say that we also get him leaving all these voicemails to his mother, but we never hear him actually talking to his mother,
Mm-hmm.
which I also found interesting. Like we don't ever hear him talking to anyone on the other line. He's just giving her updates about his life, and it never actually you never actually hear anyone on the other line, which
Mm-hmm.
makes me think, does he even have a mother? Is this the dominant or the prime personality, or is Steven the creation? Um,
Mm-hmm.
or is Marc the creation in this world anyway? In this version of Moon Knight. Um, so he notices that it's really late, and it's supposed to be Friday, and he goes to the date. And he calls the woman, and she says, "Why are you calling me?" And she's very upset. And it turns out that it isn't Friday; it is Sunday, and he's missed the entire weekend. So, which would make sense. So, it would if it wasn't a dream, it would take some time to get from London to somewhere in the middle of Europe, and then back to London. So yeah, he was gone. He was gone for a little while, and he obviously perhaps was also gone from work for longer than he thought he was supposed to be as well. So
Mm-hmm.
like he missed a day of work also, which is I was surprised that Donna didn't say something to him the next day or whatever. Maybe,
Right.
maybe he had the Friday off, and that's maybe his alternate personality schedules the mercenary work for when Steven has the day off. And steals his weekends and his days off, and steals his weekends and his days off from him. Yeah, so
It's like Friday. I already planned mercenary work. Saturday, mercenary work. Sunday, mercenary work.
yeah,
Monday, gift shop.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so he, yeah, he. I think this is when he talks to the living statue.
I think it was, yeah, I think it was right. Was it right after, or this was like was it before then? I think it was before then, though.
You think it was before
Before
then?
the
It was
cup, before all the
as
action
before the cup.
scenes
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff like
So
that.
there's a scene where he's
Yeah.
basically downloading on his life to a living statue about
Yeah.
how terrible his life is because he has this sleeping disorder. So yeah, I guess
Right.
it was after. Um, and this is when he
But what was after was when Harrow came back in. This was right after, so yeah.
well, yes, and then I mean after the date,
Mhm.
the after the aborted date where he gets so sad that as a vegan he starts to order he starts to order a steak, and he doesn't even know how to order a steak. He said, I want the good bit, the good bit. And
Mhm.
they asked him how to make it. It's like the best way, make it the best way. He doesn't even know how to order a steak. He's just resigned to, like, this is, I don't know what's going on. My life is such a shamble. Um,
Mhm.
and he goes home, and he finds uh, a
So,
weird, yeah, he finds like a loose board, right? Is what it
Mhm.
was.
Yes.
Yeah, he finds a loose board, and he finds Mark's stash, I guess.
Mhm.
And he starts he looks through he finds a phone, he starts flipping through the numbers, and he sees a number for Layla, and he's about to call Layla, and then Layla calls him, and then
Mhm.
calls him Mark.
Right.
And he says, "Why do you call me Mark?" And then she
Mhm.
hangs up and tries to call her back, and it doesn't work. And this is when this is the first time we actually start to hear Mark. I think we
Right.
might have seen Mark in the mirror, like, but Steven never noticed him. I think
Right.
the audience, like we would see Steven move away, and then the mirror the mirror version of him would stay there. But at this
Mhm.
point, Mark actually is talking to him. He doesn't know who's talking to him. He starts running around, and then he actually sees Mark in the mirror, and sees Mark acting a little bit differently than he
Mhm.
does. Is this also when he runs out of his apartment and Khonshu comes down the hallway as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So he does. He seems very afraid. He doesn't know what's going on. Khonshu's coming down the hallway, and then it turns into an old lady, and the old lady is super freaked out about from him.
Yeah.
I'm here to see my friend. She's expecting me. Saying very loud because he seems like I can imagine from her perspective. She seems like a really weird like person, and you don't want to be around this weird person.
Yeah, it's more like serial killer vibes,
Yeah,
you
definitely,
know.
definitely.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
tries to play it off. He's like, "Oh, I lost my contact," but it doesn't look
Contact,
like
yeah.
he lost his contact. It looks just like he's like a weird person. Um,
Correct.
so I think then we get another break in time because we're like for most of this episode, we don't get to see Mark's perspective. We're all Steven's
Hmm.
perspective. We get another break
Right.
in time, and then he's on the. We jump to Monday morning, and he's on the bus to work after
Hmm.
after that happening the night before. So he's on the bus to work, and he's surrounded by a bunch of people that are just staring at him like he's a crazy person.
Hmm.
Um, but we also see that Harrow is on the bus because when he gets off the
Right.
bus, he freaks out. Harrow follows him in, and it seems like he has his disciples everywhere, even employed by the museum itself. And
Hmm.
Harrow tries to weigh. Well, Harrow tells him a little bit about Emmet, which is the god that he worships, and
Hmm.
tells him that she can look ahead to see if anyone is going to do something bad. Basically, like I don't know, Egyptian god Minority Report. Um,
Right.
so, and she could have prevented the Holocaust. She could have prevented the Armenian genocide. He lists a bunch of things, and Steven's like that would have been great. He's just trying to get away from this guy because he's very afraid of this guy. He mentions the Avatar, and and Steven was like, "Oh, you mean the blue people?" It's funny. Um, the blue people thing was funny. He also mentions the anime as well, which is
Yes, they
also cool.
did.
Which is also cool. Um, there, I think after that, Haro actually tries to weigh his soul, similar to what we saw earlier in the episode. And when he does that, like the weight, the scales don't balance one way or the other because they're confused because you can imagine that there's lots of different personalities in him. There's more than one soul or whatever.
Hmm.
And he says that there's chaos in him, and he tells his disciples to let him go. So Steven's doing inventory because that's what Donna makes him do because she hates him or whatever. Later on that night,
Yeah.
and then a beast. I think it's a jackal, right? A jackal.
Hmm.
Jackal.
A jackal beast comes after him in the museum. We keep seeing reflections of Mark as well, and he gets cornered in a bathroom, and then we actually have more conversations with Mark in the mirror. Like I said, this is what we see, and this is what we've seen before. This narrative device, or this cinematic device rather, to show multiple
Hmm.
personalities. We saw this with Gollum looking down in a puddle.
Right.
In I think the Return of the King, when he's talking to
No, it was two towers.
it
Two
was,
towers.
are you
Two
sure?
towers. Two towers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Two towers.
Two towers. And
Um.
then reflection. Yeah.
Okay. So we get this scene is really well shot. So we get
Hmm.
the way that mirrors would actually work, where when you have two mirrors pointed towards each other, there's sort of an infinity effect, and you would see that. But then they change it with CGI so that his reflection isn't going into infinity. Is you just see Mark there talking to him.
Hmm.
So that was very cool. And he was telling himself, this isn't happening. This isn't happening. He's like, yeah, I can save us, and he just lets go. It's very interesting.
Right.
It's very interesting to see how like ferocious this beast is. Like it's I don't know why. First of all, this bathroom has such a thick door because he's banging on it, and it's like a vault door. It's like a door of a vault. It's denting giant dents of like in the metal. It's like, what are they saving in the bathroom? What are they protecting in the bathroom that this door is so?
I don't know.
So
maybe they are trying to prevent
decoration to look like they're in a pyramid or something like that. You know, I think it's about decoration, I guess. So it had to be a steel wall or steel door.
I don't know. It was
trying to prevent beasts. They're just trying to prevent all the beasts that are coming alive in the museum, just like Night at the Museum.
Maybe. I mean, so there was a joke that I saw earlier today. Khonshu is the person who brought all those things to life in the Night of the Museum movie. It's the same Egyptian god that gives Marc. So maybe. I don't know.
I mean, Night of the Museum is a Disney Plus movie. No, I think it's on Disney Plus. So
it was a Fox. Yeah. Was it a Fox movie before? And now it's a Disney Plus.
I believe so. Yes,
it's a Fox movie.
So maybe there's a connection there. Khonshu is what brought everything to life. So
there you go.
There's a reference there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Marc takes over, and it's like as ferocious as this beast is. It's so funny. Like we don't get to see most of the fight. We just see things like being thrown out of the bathroom. But this beast that was knocking down a wall is like holding on for dear life and trying to escape. Like it's clawing its way out of the bathroom, but it gets pulled back in, and then Marc starts wailing on it and like beats it to death. And we see him in the Moon Knight costume, which I think looks pretty cool. It definitely looks like Egyptian mummy wrapping, sort of. So there's definitely some CGI elements to it, especially how it comes on, like wraps around him at the very beginning when Steven lets Marc take over, but it looks practical as well in parts. I think it's similar to how they make vision work. So like Paul Bettany has an actual prosthetic cowl on his body and also an actual suit, but for some of the details they use CGI for his face and things like that. So I think there's some CGI in there, but there's probably a lot of practical as well, just to make it cheaper to make, but also make it better looking as well. Because when you try to make all of that stuff in CGI, unless you have unlimited budget and unlimited time, it doesn't always look real. So I think there's kind of a mix of things there. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that was a pretty good review of the Moon Knight character. So yeah, it's kind of good kind of end to the first episode, and again lets the audience kind of say, well, you should keep watching here and see what will happen to all these different individuals. So it was a good reveal at the very end there.
Yeah, and I'm definitely looking forward to what will happen next. I'm not as confused as Marc I'm not as confused as Steven because I have knowledge from the comics. I also I have knowledge from the comics and seen the trailers, but there are definitely certain things that I don't understand or I don't know how they're going to tell it in this universe, right? So I'm interested to see how they're going to tell the backstory of Marc, and if there's going to be more conversations between Marc and Steven in the mirror, where maybe Marc is the one in the mirror and Steven is the one in the mirror and Marc is the one who has control over the body. So yeah, it's I'm looking forward to it. I mean, this one has, unlike a lot of Marvel stuff, I think it has like a 70-something% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I think some critics have some mixed reviews because most critics were kind of new critics, so we're not in that group. Got screeners. They got like the first 4 episodes of 6.
Right.
So they got to see the first 4 episodes, and it wasn't universally loved like a lot. Like the majority of Marvel stuff. So I'm wondering what's coming down the pike in the next couple episodes that people were were mixed on. Why people were mixed on. We'll see. Yeah.
But also, I think is also the other thing is I think this is the first Disney Plus show where they're introducing something new.
Yeah, this is new character.
Because all the rest of them that we've seen last year, they're all established characters. I mean, even with the What If, I mean, you knew it was established characters.
Except for what?
Yeah, go ahead.
Except Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi was technically the brand new
right.
Phase 4.
So, well, Eternals too, but we're talking about like the MCC shows, and all the MCC shows last year. I think that's what Colin was talking about. All the MCC, all of the MCU
shows,
MCU, all the MCU shows. Blank there. MCU shows last year were about established characters. So we got WandaVision, we got Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we got Loki, we got What If, and then we got Hawkeye. So and while all of those shows introduced new characters, the anchor was an established character that we already knew. In every one of those shows. So
that's probably why people were might hesitate, because it is something new, and I think that it will be very interesting to kind of see how. This year, we're most likely getting She-Hulk as well. We're definitely getting Ms. Marvel. So there's going to be some new characters that's going to be built off of this. And I think that with everything that comes new, there's always going to be criticism, to everything that comes about. And also because Marvel is always going to be under a microscope now because of what they've established over 25, 27 films and also the Disney Plus shows. So it's going to be criticized. And also there is also as well, people might be fatigued from the MCU, not us because, we love the MCU in general, but there might be some fatigue that sets in, and they might say, oh, we're not going to deal with this anymore, even though the quality might be just as good or even better than a lot of the other shows and the movies that we've seen.
Yeah. So any, I guess, last thoughts about the episode? Any predictions for what's coming up over the next couple weeks based on what you saw in this episode?
My guess that in this first episode, I watched it twice and thinking it made me think that maybe the next we talked about, he probably says earlier that this episode we see Stephen Grant's perspective. Maybe the next episode now we see full on Moon Knight. We can see Marc's perspective. Maybe next episode we'll learn more of Marc and see, and maybe we'll flashback at how he got, like you said earlier, how he got his powers from Khonshu and everything like that, and how he first maybe he will learn how he first started become Moon Knight, and then, as you say here, was Stephen the real person or was the creation of that person? I mean, which in comics, Marc was the real person,
the main identity,
the real identity. But then we don't know how Marvel is going to do with this one here. So, which I find fascinating when we see that they're introducing Stephen first, which is one of the personalities, not Marc as the main identity. So maybe we'll learn why is Marc like this, and how this Stephen came to be, and how does Stephen get all these memories of, let's say, talking to his mom, and how he get the job at the museum and such like that, So that's my guess. And then we may see some funny references, like you mentioned earlier. We mentioned the Avatar. We mentioned about the Nights in the Museum, which is the whole museum thing where the beast showed up out of nowhere. It reminds me of the Night in the Museum. So maybe the whole Marvel thing, though, because from what my guess is, with the movies right now, we're seeing both of the supernatural and beyond space and time. So I think there's a theme right here. So since we mentioned that, Doctor Strange is obviously space and time, Loki, which is an introduction about time and displacement, stuff like that. So maybe we might see Kang the Conqueror which is announced that he will be the main villain in Ant-Man 3. So I think there's a mix of a blend of like the theme here of supernatural and space and time and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
So but this one, Moon Knight, is more supernatural,
Mm-hmm.
which my guess might connect to Doctor Strange 2.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying it's completely connected, but it could reference it to or lead into Doctor Strange 2.
It's funny you say that. I saw an image over the last couple of days with Doctor Strange and Moon Knight together. So he might factor into the show, but I don't know how. But he would be the best character that's already established in the MCU. Because, as you say, what we're working with here are supernatural elements. And I know we're working with gods, and technically Thor is a god, but not really. He's a space alien. The way that the way that the MCU tells it. So like, but the person who actually works with supernatural elements is Stephen Strange, and this would be actually a good bridge to the multiverse of madness, which we are going to get in May, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe
So maybe he shows up. Maybe that's the Marvel connection that they make. He has to clean up whatever. But I don't know. The last time we saw him, he wasn't the Sorcerer Supreme. That was Wong. So
yeah.
So who knows?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah. All right. Any other final thoughts? Any other thoughts, Colin?
No, I think I'm all set in terms of thoughts for tonight, but definitely looking forward to more episodes and how it all, again, like what David said, how does it all get interconnected?
Yeah, I definitely want to see Layla in the next episode, and maybe some more Khonshu as well, because he was funny. Khonshu is voiced by F. Murray Abraham. So yeah, hearing more of him and hearing more of his sarcastic annoyance with Stephen should be interesting in the next couple episodes. But anyway, that is what we think. We are interested to hear what you guys think. So please comment down below to join the conversation. And like and subscribe to get more content like this. And we will see you next time. Thanks. Bye, guys.